and welcome to the first Planetary Potion episode of Unclouded Eye. Planetary Potion is going to be coming out about twice a month. It's going to be around the new and the full moon, and this is where the astrological forecast is going to live from now on. It will mostly just be me, but Ty will join me from time to time. And we are currently on a hiatus from the podcast, but we will be coming back to you pretty soon with some new episodes that are more about storytelling and astrology. And we'll definitely have more information on that soon. But Planetary Potion is where you will be able to find the forecast from now on. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to go through planet by planet to kind of blend this potion of what the next 2 weeks might be like. And we will start with the planet that is least affecting us over the next 2 weeks, and we will gradually work our way up to the planet that is most impactful over the next 2 weeks. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. So we are looking at the period between March 10th and March 23rd for this episode. We will start with the planet that is doing the least this period. That is Jupiter. We have absolutely no major Jupiter transits happening over this 2-week period. Jupiter is just hanging out in the sign of Gemini. We do have some minor lunar transits that will be happening, but we're not really going to focus on those for this podcast. Jupiter is not making any major transits of note, and this just means that we're not going to have a whole lot of Jupiter energy over the next 2 weeks, and I'm sure we will in future episodes so we can get into more of what Jupiter energy is like, but just basically, we're just kind of floating along without any major Jupiter action. Up next, the planet that is doing the least. It's pretty much tied with Jupiter, but I'm putting it up one notch just because it's been so active and so much that we're still kind of recovering from the process, and that is Mars. Mars was retrograde over the last couple months, and while it is direct now, we are still feeling the after effects of that retrograde, which is why I have placed Mars at the second lowest level here. So while we technically don't have any Mars major transits happening, Mars is still in its shadow from the retrograde. And what is meant by that, the retrograde period began back at the end of December, and basically Mars is still retracing its steps. Retrograde took it back through the degrees. It went back through Leo and into Cancer. And so it is still kind of retracing its steps. It's still in the path that it was in during its retrograde. Basically, the shadow period is the time both before the retrograde begins, where it will be kind of retracing back through that path, and then the time after the retrograde where it is kind of catching up to where it was when the retrograde began. So it's not going to be until May 2nd when it gets out of that shadow. That's the point where it will reach 6 degrees Leo, which is where it was when the retrograde began. So we still have this kind of hangover effect of the Mars retrograde. And Mars retrograde really did impact energy levels. It might have made us more tired, more prone to want to hibernate or rest. We could have felt a little more passive or passive aggressive even, and we're still kind of recovering from that. I am personally feeling this a lot. I do have a lot of personal placements in Leo and Cancer, and if you have the same, you're going to notice this more than people who don't. So for all of my Leo and Cancer listeners, or those of you who have significant placements, and by that I mean your sun, your moon, your rising, your Mercury, Venus, and Mars. If you have any of those in Leo and Cancer, you will be feeling this energy. So the retrograde ended back at the end of February, and now we are still going to be in this period of shadow until May 2nd, we may find that the energy levels do increase once Mars will move into Leo, which is going to be happening at the end of April, just because Mars is considered in its fall in the sign of Cancer. So to have this planet that is basically not at its full power is also going to be kind of draining us of energy to an extent, but it is better than it was during the retrograde. So that's why Mars is second on this list. Next up is Uranus. Uranus is eighth on our list of planets in terms of how much they are affecting us over this 2-week period. We don't have a whole lot of stuff going on in Uranus, but there is one major transit that will be happening. This is occurring on March 14th, and the sun will be sextiling over to Uranus at that time. On the 14th, the sun will be at 24 degrees of Pisces, and Uranus will be at 24 degrees of Taurus. A sextile is a 60-degree aspect between two planets, and it is considered harmonious. It might not be as strong in its positivity as a trine or as powerful as a conjunction, but the sextile just allows these planets' energies to blend in a way that is very compatible, very harmonious. So when the sun sextiles Uranus on March 14th, this is going to award us an ability to break out of routines. The sun is really all about our outlook, our perspective. It's sort of our general auric energy, like on any given day. It's like very much an overview or a kind of like egoic view of the world. And so that is kind of shaken up a bit in a positive way because Uranus is a planet that serves as a catalyst. It adds this kind of spark of electricity into events. It brings along change. It brings along significant shifts. And this is welcome because the sextile ensures that this is a more positive thing. This could only be negative if you are really holding tight to the way things are. And even though change might be helpful or even a positive thing, you might still be really clinging to something. This is the only way this transit could be negative. And we're really going to feel this primarily on March 14th because this is a sun transit. The sun moves about a degree a day. So we're really only going to feel this transit for about one day. We may feel it kind of like the half day before, the half day after. And the time that it's going to be perfecting is at 5:16 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday the 14th. So we would see that kind of creeping in the evening before, and it really depends on your time zone. This might be happening at a completely different time if you're, in Australia or Japan or something. So it's going to be important to convert this into your time zone. And to have this happening on this day, it kind of shows us that there could be some change introduced. There could be a new way of looking at a situation. There could be some surprises coming in. And we might also find that we are moving away from group thought. We are thinking for ourselves, being a little bit more rebellious, but it ends up being a positive thing. It's not something where we're just trying to separate ourselves from the group for no particular reason, just to be contrary. It's more of a positive change. And again, the only way this could be negative is if you were resisting this, if you were really digging in your heels and refusing to make that shift happen. All right, number 7 on our list of potent planets for this 2-week potion that we're creating is Saturn. Saturn's up next on this list. Saturn is currently in Pisces, and it only has one major transit happening. It's going to conjunct the sun on March 12th. So on March 12th, which is a Wednesday, we will have the sun conjuncting Saturn at 22 degrees of Pisces. So they're in the sun is in the last week of Pisces season at this point, and Saturn is currently at 22 degrees of Pisces, gradually making its way through the end of that sign. This is perfecting at 6:28 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, March 12th. So again, you want to convert that into your time zone. And this is going to be potent for about a 24-hour period, with it peaking at that time that I just mentioned, 6:28 a.m. Eastern Time. The Sun conjunct Saturn is interesting. Anytime we have a planet in conjunction with the Sun, it is said to be Kazimi, which is an Arabic word for the heart of the Sun. It is inside the heart of the Sun, and it kind of gets swallowed up by the energy of the Sun. The Sun is, of course, this vibrant, large mass in our solar system. It is the center of our solar system. When planets are right on it, they tend to be absorbed into that energy. But to say that they lose power, lose their ability to alter things, would be a mistake, because they're still adding their own unique energy into the situation. It's just that the Sun could overpower in some ways. Like, there are going to be some elements of Saturn at play on this day. Sun conjunct Saturn is a time when the willpower is strong. We have this desire to improve, a desire to focus, a desire to meet our responsibilities. Now, of course, that's not going to be true for every single person in the world. But what we do know is that responsibilities, karma, and the idea of having to complete tasks in order to get to where you want to go is going to be a theme. So either you welcome that and you kind of tap into this solar Saturnian energy and start to do the work that's going to get you to where you're going, or you are going to maybe realize that you have to kind of do that work, and you could be maybe resentful or frustrated by that. So your reaction to it is more individual, and that might have to do with you and your personality or your personal transits that you're going through. Because everyone has personal transits. These are the global transits. This is what's happening in the sky. But the way that the planets are moving overhead is impacting your personal natal chart as well, and creating personal transits. So you might have a different reaction. But what we can gather is that this is a good day for getting stuff done. It's a good day for trying to align with your ambition, trying to push yourself to do more and to try more. And again, it might not be the best time for like huge steps, but Saturn is all about baby steps. It's all about building these foundations to gradually get to where you want to go, to gradually build what you want to build. And it's all about not cutting corners, not skipping steps. So this is really the energy of Wednesday, March 12th. Number 6 on our list of potent planets for this 2-week period is Neptune. So Neptune is currently in Pisces, where it has been for the last 14 years. And this is actually the last 2-week period where I can say Neptune's going to be in Pisces, because next time we talk, when I come back to you on March 24th with your next episode, I'm going to be talking about Neptune changing signs, which is very significant. This hasn't happened since 2011. And Neptune will retrograde back into Pisces later this year, but it is pretty much ending this cycle that began in 2011. So this is important. We are wrapping up some of this Neptunian energy. So Neptune governs the idea of illusion, the idea of spirituality. It's very abstract, very ethereal. Its energy is very foggy. It's more right-brained and more about like channeling in intuition, channeling in spirituality. It's all about sort of escaping from the hard, fast reality that we see, that we experience with our senses. Neptune is the opposite of senses. Neptune is very much about the imagination, the intuition, kind of escaping into that third eye channel and not looking around you. It's more about like feeling into a situation. So it's a little hard to put into words because it's difficult to define, really. But Neptune is going to be doing a few things this 2-week period before it enters Aries, which we'll talk about next time. But just keep in mind, these are endings. We're wrapping up a Neptune cycle, and it's significant. We'll talk a lot more about it next time, and I would hazard a guess. I haven't ordered the planets for next time yet, but I imagine Neptune will be up at the very top or very close to it if not. So Neptune has one major transit that I want to highlight, and this is happening on March 19th, and it moves into a conjunction with the sun on this day. So at this point, the sun is at 29 degrees of Pisces. This is the last day of Pisces season. So we're near the very end of Pisces. We're at the very cusp of it. And with Neptune just kind of resting there, Neptune's been at that 29th degree for a while. Neptune moves slowly. Neptune has actually been sitting at that 29th degree since March 3rd, and it will be there until it enters Aries on March 30th. So it's going to be at that 29th degree for almost 4 weeks because it moves so slowly, whereas the sun is only going to be at that 29th degree for 1 day, just to kind of compare their movement and how slow and how fast they are. This conjunction is happening at 7:24 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday the 19th. And this is a really potent day. You're going to feel this energy of intensity. And in fact, you might feel it through much of March just because Neptune is at that 29th degree. The 29th degree is also known as the anaretic degree in astrology. And this is going to strengthen the energy of that planet, but it also creates a little sense of chaos just because there is this closeness, like you're approaching that newness, you're approaching that 0 degree mark and that entrance into Aries, and we're at this last degree of Pisces. And there's like this strong energy of all of the Pisces lessons that have happened that Neptune has experienced over the last 14 years and the sun has experienced over the last month. And it's all just kind of culminating. It's all there. So you might feel this intensity of downloads happening on Wednesday. You might be getting a lot of ideas and dreams and intuitive hits coming in your direction. So this is a big day, and I want to reiterate, even though this is the only major transit that Neptune is going through over this 2-week period, it's still very significant because Neptune is at that 29th degree, and that's going to give us this sort of spiritual heightened energy, but also a little bit of uncertainty, apprehension, this feeling that's a little more chaotic in its presentation. So just being aware of that, there could be some confusion coming in. I mean, Neptune it's illusory. It's very much hard to define. So it could be difficult to tap into logic, to tap into the left brain, and to be able to kind of do menial things or tasks that are more detail oriented. Neptune wants to lay back and watch the clouds. It wants to channel poetry. It wants to make a painting, but not plan it out, not color in the lines. It wants to do abstraction, So it's more about that energy. And you might find yourself really feeling that sort of unfocused and untethered vibe for this 2-week period. And collectively, it could feel like we don't really know where we're going. I mean, I'm certainly noticing that. It feels like things are very much up in the air. They're very confusing and ungrounded. So Neptune, that's why it is number 6 in our list of planets for the 2-week period. Up next on our countdown of potent planets, we have number 5, Pluto. That was a lot of alliteration there, a lot of P's. So Pluto is currently in Aquarius. It moved in at the end of 2024 after a 16-year stint in Capricorn. Pluto here in Aquarius really shook up the energy. Aquarius is definitely a sign that is focused on the big picture and thinking about sort of the most idealistic outcome. It is more focused on like power to the people, humanitarianism, but also technology, improving things. It's very focused on possibilities and projecting into the future. People with a lot of Aquarius placements tend to be ahead of their time. They are leaders in their fields. They tend to be very, very much like a few steps ahead of humanity. They can almost seem very alien or very advanced in some ways. So having Pluto, the planet of transformation, enter this place is clearly going to bring a lot of shakeups, and it's going to be here until 2043. So we are in this period of immense transformation for the next 18 years. And this 2 week period, Pluto is going to be making 2 transits. The first of which is happening on March 21st, and this is Pluto forming a sextile with Venus. Venus is currently in Aries and it is retrograde. So this is interesting because of that Venus retrograde coloring, that little detail there. So Venus will be at 3 degrees of Aries. It's gradually making its way back through the sign, and Pluto is currently at 3 degrees of Aquarius. On Friday the 21st at 5:31 p.m. Eastern Time, this sextile occurs, and we feel this for about 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer, could be up to 36. Venus is a pretty fast-moving planet, and it is basically changing degrees every day or every day and a half, depending on its current speed, current movements. And with it retrograde, there is this energy of seeking out ways to exert control and influence over others, but this is a sextile. Remember what I said earlier about sextiles? It's a harmonious 60-degree contact between these 2 planets. So it's mostly a positive thing, or at least it can be utilized for positive effect. Of course, it depends on who's wielding the weapon. Am I right? So with this, Venus being this planet of relationships, of love and connection with other people, our artistic endeavors. You know, Venus rules over Taurus and Libra, 2 of the most artistic signs, and Pluto being a planet of transformation and shadow work and the underworld and the depths. And it's kind of like if you think of all of astrology as a building, Pluto's the basement. It's like what lies beneath, and Venus is like the heart of the house. It's like the hearth, what keeps it warm, what keeps it glowing and vibrant. So these 2 are working in tandem. They're working together. So we are able to maybe see more of a situation. Like maybe you're able to think back to people from your past, people or events from your past, and you're able to maybe see where they were coming from more. There's a softness, there's a transforming of how we are viewing these situations, and we're able to maybe put ourselves more in the other person's shoes, or maybe we're not. Maybe we still don't really know why they did the things they did, but we're able to maybe let go. We're able to kind of work through it and release and realize that, clinging to this is really only harming us. There could also be a similar effect with artistic projects. You might be able to look at something that you left unfinished, or maybe something you created a while ago and you didn't quite resonate with it then, but now you're able to see something special in it. You're able to look below the surface. Pluto is awarding you that ability. There could be the tendency to possibly obsess over the past. Venus retrograde can do that to us. And especially with Pluto, that's kind of a never-ending chasm into our emotions, our feelings. And from here, I think that it can be very helpful in bringing healing. And it's just going to be important to recognize when to let go and when to, continue on. Like, for instance, let's say we're using that artistic project as our example. Let's say you have an unfinished painting and it's been sitting there for years, even like it's been there for a while. Maybe it's literally in your basement. That's very Plutonian of it and of you. So you might pick it up around this time, and on that day maybe you recognize, okay, like I don't think I'm ever going to finish this. So you paint over it, you give it a fresh coat of white paint, and now you have a canvas you can use for something new. But you've made that decision, you've processed it, you've let go. Or you pick it up in your basement and suddenly you kind of connect more with where you were when you were creating that. Like maybe the last couple of years while it's been sitting in the basement, you weren't able to connect with it. You didn't really feel like you could pick that up again, but now you're like, okay, no, I see what this needs, and you're able to finish the painting as it is. So either way, suddenly there's not this thing in your basement collecting dust anymore. You've done something with it, be it, deciding to let go of it or deciding to finish it and kind of continue that vision. So that's what this transit offers. Then on March 23rd, which is actually the last day that we're looking at in this 2-week period, we have Pluto sextiling the sun. And this is happening at 3:31 p.m. Eastern Time. So this is Sunday, March 23rd, and the sun will be at 3 degrees Aries, pretty newly in Aries season at this point, and Pluto will be at 3 degrees Aquarius still, because Pluto is the slowest of all of these planetary bodies we discuss. It moves slow. So the sun sextile to Pluto is wonderful for allowing us to recognize the changes that need to take place within ourselves and being more willing to reflect and to think more about what we want to transform into, taking that Aquarian energy, like with Pluto and Aquarius, and kind of applying it to ourselves, the sun being more of that egoic part of ourselves, and being able to recognize, the positive shifts we need to make, the things that we can release in order to bring more growth and evolvement into our lives and into our space. So the 23rd could be useful in helping us to overcome fears and be more courageous, be more ready to take on those changes. All right, now we have number 4 on our countdown, which is the moon. I think that a lot of people might have expected the moon to be at the very top because we are entering eclipse season, but that just goes to show there's a lot happening this 2-week period because the moon is number 4 on my list. So on March 14th, we have a total lunar eclipse happening. This is actually a blood moon. It's a full moon in the sign of Virgo, and then we'll have the moon waning through the rest of the period. So this is potent. We're entering eclipse season. This is the entrance on March 14th, and we will have that close out on March 29th when we have our solar eclipse occur, and we might feel some residual effects over the last few days of the month. But the eclipse season proper, I tend to think of eclipse season from the first eclipse to the second with a little bit of bleed over at the end. I know different astrologers might have different interpretations of that, but that's how I tend to see it. So from about March 14th through, I'd say the end of the month, but technically the 29th when we have our solar eclipse, that's eclipse season. So eclipse season is a really potent window. It's a portal, if you will. Magic and mysticism and all of the unknown tends to be a little bit easier to access. And remember what I said earlier in this episode, Neptune is at the 29th degree. There is so much kind of ethereally and spiritually going on underneath the surface of everything right now that it could feel like a lot. It could feel very inspiring and interesting and help you to widen your perspective. And really, like, if you want to get into it, you could probably make some really beautiful art or writing during this time. But it could be very intense. It could be emotional for some people, and it could also be very confusing. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk specifically about this full moon / total lunar eclipse. So this is occurring on March 14th, as I mentioned, and we will have the sun at 23 degrees of Pisces on this date, and the moon will be at 23 degrees of Virgo on this date. So Virgo and Pisces are opposite each other on the zodiac wheel. Anytime you have a full moon, you're going to have two signs, the sun and the moon, in these opposing signs. They're always opposite each other in the sky. The full moon perfects at 2:54 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday the 14th. So this might actually fall on the 13th for you if you are, on the west coast of the United States, or if you are, in certain places in South America or in Hawaii or certain islands, like you might find that this is actually happening on the 13th for you, but for most people it will be on the 14th. So this lunar eclipse is going to be visible for much of the Western Hemisphere. So in the United States and in parts of South America and Central America, the Caribbean, you will likely be able to see this depending on weather. And this is a total eclipse, which means that the sun, earth, and moon are aligned together when the moon passes into the shadow of the earth. So the earth will prevent sunlight from reaching the moon because it is effectively kind of sandwiched between the sun and the moon, and it is blocking the light of the sun from reaching the moon in totality. So I think that the totality for this is going to last a little over an hour, so you should be able to see it depending on weather, depending on where in the world you live, but there's a good portion, like it's not happening just over an ocean. Like sometimes we'll get eclipses that are only visible for like the middle of the ocean, so most people can't see it, but there will be a lot of people in the earth that can see this, hopefully. And this is known as a blood moon because there's going to be a color to the moon. It appears reddish in color because it gets illuminated by sunlight that is sort of filtered through the Earth's atmosphere. So it gives it this appearance of looking kind of like a blood red color, which is so magical, so mystical. Like, I'm ready. So during this full moon, the sun is conjunct Saturn and the moon is trining Uranus. So there is this element of kind of rejecting certain ambitions or having this push and pull between sort of the material world. Virgo, the moon is in Virgo, which is this very earthy, very sensual and grounded sign. But it also, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So there's a lot of mental energy, a lot of thinking and planning and refining and trying to get the environment around you as perfect as possible. Like wanting the environment to be clean and clear so that the mind can also be clear. That's very Virgo in its energy. So kind of push and pull between that and the sun in Pisces, which is very dreamlike and ethereal and more in the emotions and in the intuition, and having this kind of pull between that moon in Virgo, which is opposing Saturn as well. So there's this element of kind of bucking against what we're supposed to be doing, bucking against what we feel like we have to be responsible for. There could be this feeling of wanting to escape, wanting to flee from that, and trying to find balance between the material world, the earthly realm, and the spiritual realm or our emotional world, like trying to find that balance. And there could be some surprises that come in. The moon is trine Uranus, so we might be able to see things in a new light and gain new perspective as a result of this moon. And this could be a very emotional moon for a lot of people. Any full moon that has Pisces in its axis, the sun being in Pisces for this. So whether that's the Pisces full moon during Virgo season or the Virgo full moon during Pisces season, they can carry some emotion with them. So, letting it out, letting it feel free to move through you and not trying to bottle it up, not trying to keep it hidden and protected. So this might look like trying to not be overly logical. The Virgo vibe is sometimes to analyze and to try to make sense of things. And, we don't want to get too ungrounded, too untethered from the earthly plane, but we also want to move away from overthinking and, thought patterns that might be harmful to us. And the Pisces energy of the sun can really help with that. So kind of finding the balance between being too untethered and too analytical. Full moons are all about balance. Always and forever, full moons are about finding balance. And here we're trying to find balance between the Virgo and Pisces polarity. So taking the best of both worlds, if you will. So yeah, we're in eclipse season. Clearly, the moon is at play here. There's a lot of energy coming in, but there's still 3 planets to talk about. Number 3 on our list of potent planets for the month, we have Mercury. Mercury is in Aries this during this 2-week period, and it is conjuncting Venus on March 11th. And this is happening at 8 degrees of Aries. Venus is currently retrograde when this happens, so they are meeting here. Venus is kind of retracing its steps back through Aries and meets up with Mercury here. And this is going to be perfecting at 6:54 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, the 11th. And this is a beautiful transit for communication and for socialization and for connecting in with other people and feeling like you can really talk about things, especially things from the past. There could be a nostalgic bent to this and a need to express maybe old feelings that have kind of been lingering. We could feel like we need to just get it out. And we might have people from the past coming back, maybe literally, maybe in our memories and our dreams. There could be this very sentimental vibe to the day. We might be dreaming about our grandmother who passed away or, a friend that we lost a long time ago. There's a lot of that coming up to the surface. And we're going to feel this throughout the day on Tuesday, but we could also feel it into Wednesday as well. And you might find that this is a good day for brainstorming about artistic projects with friends and working on group projects. And we might revisit old ideas with people. There's definitely going to be circling back around to the past that's happening. So it's not going to be all like full steam ahead, like let's try something completely new. There will be threads that bring you back to the past, like very literally on this day. Like there will be a lot of old conversations coming back up, people from the past. You might be retracing your steps in some way, having conversations again that you've already had, but some of that could be positive, some of it could be frustrating. So just keep it in mind. And my advice through all of this Venus retrograde is to always consider before acting. If there's somebody that left your life and they're kind of coming back around again, it's going to be really important to consider, like, should I open this door again? There's a reason it closed. Sometimes it's so we can learn a lesson so that when the person comes back, it can help us. But other times it's like, that I've already learned everything I could have learned from this situation. It's not going to improve my quality of life to let this person back in. So my advice is to be patient, to sit with things, and to take your time. So if all that weren't enough, then we have Mercury retrograde happening on March 15th. So at 2:46 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday the 15th, or this could be Friday the 14th, depending on where in the world you live, Mercury will be stationing retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries, and this retrograde will be lasting until April 7th. So Mercury will move back through the early degrees of Aries and into the last degrees of Pisces, and it will station direct at 26 degrees of Pisces on April 7th. We will talk about that more next time, but to kind of give you an idea of what the beginning of this retrograde looks like, we are kind of just looking up until about the 23rd. So this is going to take us through the first week of the retrograde. So Mercury is retrograde in Aries during this time. It won't move into Pisces until the 29th. So we will definitely talk about that more because that will have a very different flavor than Mercury retrograde in Aries. Aries is a very mental sign. It's all about learning and being impulsive and direct and not wanting to wait, having a lot of impatience. So when Mercury is moving backwards, we might be finding that we are having trouble coming up with the right words, the right thoughts. We could feel like we need to retrace our steps. I know that when I was originally recording this podcast, I completely forgot to put in the Mercury retrograde section, and that is so funny. I mean, Mercury isn't even retrograde yet, but I feel like that is a good example of needing to kind of retrace your thoughts because you completely skipped over something. You're like excited about it, or you're like in a rush and you just kind of forget. So my advice is to double check your work, double check. Like if I hadn't listened back to this podcast, I would have probably put it out without that. And then I would have realized and been like, oh no, that's a terrible thing to forget. It's very important. So Very important to look over what you're doing. And, I think that people with significant placements in cardinal signs are going to feel this more than others, at least for this first week of the retrograde. So if you have especially Sun, Moon, Rising, or Mercury, if you have those in Aries, in Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, you will be feeling this more. You might be more distractible, more kind of hyperactive in your brain. You could find it hard to focus and you could skim over details. It's almost like when you're reading a book and you read like a whole page and then you realize you retained none of it. So you have to keep going back and reading it again. That's kind of how I would describe this retrograde. And especially with everything else going on, that's kind of the flavor that it's taking. And this is a time really when it's going to mostly affect our impulsivity, our decision making, and overlooking details. So even if you're not, one of those signs, even if you don't have significant placements in those signs, I would say it's still going to be important because we're dealing with a lot of people in the world, and you might find you have to not only double check your work, but other people's work too. Like if you work with a team, you might have to quickly do a passover on everybody's work just because not everybody will have the awareness of Mercury retrograde in order to do this. So if you have that leg up, of course, it's not your job to do that for people, but it can be helpful, especially if it's going to affect you in the long run. So Mercury is having a month, it's having a couple weeks, and, we're definitely going to be feeling it. Mercury and Venus retrograde together. There could be a lot of confusions coming up in relationships and friendships and social dynamics. So again, making sure you're taking the time to slow down. You're making sure that you're not making mistakes. You're not pressing send on that message when you've typed something out of anger. Sit on things, sleep on things. I think we all need to be a little more patient as a society in communicating with each other, especially when we're upset. And that brings us to number 2 on our list of planets. We have Venus, the goddess of love and beauty herself. Here she is. Okay, so she is retrograde right now in the sign of Aries. And we have already gone over 2 of the 3 transits that Venus has this month. If just to kind of refresh your memory, on March 11th, we just now talked about the conjunction of Mercury and Venus. So remember, nostalgic conversations, kind of circling back around. That's that Venusian energy. On March 21st, we have the Venus sextile to Pluto, which is really great for revisiting old creative projects. Remember that analogy of the painting in your basement, or maybe, dealing with some old feelings that are coming up. Then on March 22nd, we have a conjunction between the Sun and Venus. So Venus is now entering the heart of the Sun on March 22nd. So this happens at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, the 22nd. And Venus will be at 2 degrees of Aries, so it's gradually making its way back through the beginning marks of Aries and will be going into Pisces next time we talk. And the Sun is right there with it at 2 degrees of Aries. Aries season is very fresh at this point. The Sun conjunct Venus is very good for relationships, socializing, wanting to go on dates, wanting to flirt and be romantic, really wanting to spend time with friends and in groups. It's very much a social conjunction. And we could find that we prefer to be with other people. There could be a feeling of not wanting to be alone coming up for some people. That's very strong on this day. This is really a one-day transit that we're going to be feeling just on the 22nd, or depending on what time this is happening for you. Just a little life hack for transits, especially these one-day transits that I'm talking about. The time that I give you, just subtract 12 hours from it. That's around when you're going to start to feel it. It's going to be strongest at the time I give you, and then it will kind of continue on for about 12 hours. So, convert it to your time zone and then do that 12-hour hack. So to give you an example, this one's happening at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to start to notice it at about 9:07 a.m. Eastern Time, and we'll continue to feel it until Sunday the 23rd at 9:07 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you're in California, that would be 6:07 p.m. Eastern Time. So it would start around 6:07 a.m., go till 6:07 a.m. on Sunday. So hopefully that makes sense. If you need any help converting, just let me know. So this is, again, very social. We're going to feel like we want to be around other people. Again, we could find it hard to be alone, but keep in mind, Venus is retrograde right now. And there is this sense of maybe wanting the company of people from the past or being very nostalgic. You know, when you're hanging out with people, there could be a lot of like, remember when we did this thing? Or like, you know, we all went to that restaurant after that big event that we went to, like, let's go back there. Like a lot of revisiting past memories, wanting to kind of bring back the spirit of something from the past. And it's never going to quite be the same, but there could be some nostalgia that comes up from that. But just keep in mind, you know, things could be different the second time around. And then that brings us to our most potent planet or planetary body of this 2-week period. And that, drumroll please, is the sun. The sun is the most potent planet or planetary body this time around, and I expect it will be often. The sun and the moon, they are constantly making lots of contacts with everything in the zodiac, and we have talked about all of these, but I'm going to just go down the line in order for you, just to remind you of what the sun's doing. The sun starts this period in Pisces. You know, we're talking about March 10th. The sun is in Pisces at this point. During this time on March 12th, it conjuncts Saturn. So we talked about that already. It sextiles Uranus on March 14th. Here's one we haven't talked about. It conjuncts the North Node on March 17th. So the North Node is not a planet. It's not a planetary body. It is a point in the sky. It is a point on the moon's orbit, and it governs, it's also called the head of the dragon. I love that term. Isn't it so fun? So the sun is conjuncting the head of the dragon at this point, which means that we are pulled to try new things. But, you know, there's all this past energy with Venus retrograde. So we're getting pulled. We're getting pulled into trying new things. We're getting pulled into breaking out of our comfort zone. We could feel more inspired to do so on the 17th. And we could feel like we are maybe seeing some doors open. It's up to us whether we want to take that leap or not. You know, you can stay in your comfort zone if you prefer. There's no pressure to do so, but there's an opening that's happening on the 17th. On March 19th, we have Neptune conjunct the sun, which we talked about. On March 20th, the sun enters Aries, and it will be there until April 19th when it enters Taurus. So the sun in Aries, it's the first sign of the zodiac. So it's the zodiacal new year when the sun enters Aries, and it's also the equinox. So we are kicking off the equinox on this date when the sun moves into Aries, and this is the vernal or spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, and it is the autumnal equinox in the southern hemisphere. I know I have some listeners in the southern hemisphere, so I want to make sure to include you in that. This is a time when the light of day and the darkness of night are in perfect balance. We have the exact amount of time of daylight hours as we do of nighttime hours for both hemispheres. So this is a very powerful time of balance. It's a time to experience that joy of equal light and equal night. It's really good for bringing more harmony and balance into your own life. So if things have been feeling chaotic and ungrounded, this is a really great day to kind of revel in that balance and that harmony. And Aries season is all about independence, trying new things, doing your own thing and not being worried about what other people are doing. You know, I mean, not stepping all over them or being rude or awful, but, you know, just going after what it is that you want in life and trying to not worry so much about what other people think. And it's all about kind of setting the tone for yourself. You know, in Pisces season especially, we can be very empathic, very sensitive. And I know that a lot of people who are interested in astrology tend to be more sensitive. We notice these energies. Sometimes even when they're very subtle, we all pick up on them. And Aries season is a really good lesson in remembering that you are not at the whim and mercy of the tones and energies around you. You also have the ability as an energetic being to set the energetic tone around you. You have the ability to put that out into the world and to be the tone that other people can then vibrate to. You have that ability too. And while we are obviously, we feel the energies of the planets, we can still move beyond that and have our own energy out there in the world. So I hope you enjoyed this walk through the zodiac and this mixing of planetary potions that we did today. I will be back on Monday, March 24th with your next episode of Planetary Potion. And Ty and I will be back at some point this spring with some more episodes of Unclouded Eye proper. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy these Planetary Potion episodes. They will be continuing. And yeah, let me know what you think. You can find Unclouded Eye at Unclouded Eye on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us on YouTube under our production company at Haunt Me Official. That's HAUNTME Official. And you can visit uncloudedeye.net. And from there, you can book readings with me. I offer astrology and tarot readings. You can get your natal chart read. You can see what your astrological transits are for the next 3 months. You can get birthday readings, synastry readings to see how your chart compares with another person. I also offer tarot, and I have this new thing called Reading Club where you can book a package and get readings all throughout the year to help guide you in your journey. So definitely check those out, and I will see you in a couple weeks for the next episode of Planetary Potion.